Almost time to begin. As we get ready, there's a sheet on the banister out there with 20 questions on it. If you hadn't had a chance to get that on the banister. And also, I want to thank the Crosbys again for all they did helping us get these books. We've got about 6 copies left. If you didn't get a copy, there's still a copy available up here for you. That's a book on Daniel, prophet of God. You probably saw the email that came out with all the people on it that's been sick. It's good to see Barbara back with us this morning. Just keep all those folks in your thoughts and your prayers. Got a lot of empty seats, people traveling over this holiday, so keep those in your prayers. It's good to see Brother Trey back. He got back from visiting out in Texas. He was smiling when he came in, so I assume the trip was uneventful and you had a great time, so that's okay. Anything else? Okay. Brother Dave, would you lead us in prayer, please? Brother Bird is at home.
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful this day you blessed us with, Father. We're thankful for another Lord's Day to come and worship you. We're thankful, Father, for your word that we can open and study, that we know how to serve you better. We're thankful for the example of Daniel, how he served you in adverse circumstances, Father. No matter what happens in his life, he always served you first. Be with Larry as he leads us in this study, and be with us that we might have open minds and hearts, and that seed can be planted in us. We might use it in our daily lives to better serve thee. We are mindful, Father, of those we know of our number who are out because they're healed. Be with them, continue to comfort them and help them heal. They might be back with us. In Christ's name, amen.
I tried to do something that I don't normally do, and that's hand out a sheet of questions. I have problems with that myself because I start talking and jumping around and don't stay in track with them, but we're going to try to have these questions to help us along on today's journey. We are in chapter 6 of Daniel. If you recall, as we ended chapter 5 last week, we had discussed how the Medes and the Persians, had come in and killed Belshazzar and then taken over Babylon. And we had said that the Darius came in on the 12th of October. They had diverted the river Euphrates, came in by the riverway, killed Belshazzar on the 12th of October. 17 days later, on the 29th of October, Cyrus basically walked into the city, welcomed with open arms because he had, the Medes and the Persians now had taken over from the Babylonians, which were not treating the people very, very nicely. Then that particular Darius, we had mentioned it in Whitcomb Jr.'s book, where he had done a lot of research on the Cyrus cylinder and the Nabonidus cylinder and the Chronicles and all, how he had pieced it together that was Ugbaru, which was the governor of Gutium, which is in the Zagros Mountains that are basically to the northeast of the Babylonian territory, and then that he was killed in battle on the 6th of November. And then when we start Daniel, the Darius in Daniel is a different Darius. It is Gubaru. But that's where we are right now, and with that taking place in the latter part of 539, I place the events that are happening in chapter 6 in 538. I don't think it would have gone much past that, because as we get into the lesson and they're developing the leaders and all like that, and they see that Daniel is right up there, I think that their aggravation with him would have surfaced very quickly. So if it is 538 when this happens, we are 67 years into Daniel's captivity. And we use 15, Brother Turner in his book that we handed out uses 17, but if we just use 15 plus or minus a couple of years, add 15 to 67, and what do you get? You get 82. So if we back off a couple of years or add a couple of years, we are somewhere between 80 and 84 years of age for Daniel at this point. So if you follow along in the questions as we go down, I've got them all in line. I've got the Bible verses next to it and everything. And depending on which translation or which version of the Bible you use, some of the answers could be different, because Brother Turner in his book uses the American Standard Version of 1911. I try the New King James, deal with the Old King James, so the words are a little bit different. So if you look at the first question there, Darius organized the kingdom by appointing 120 what? Satraps or governors or just officials of some kind. So, and then 3 of them were listed as presidents. Verse 1 says, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom." Now, for this to take place this quickly, if we go back and sort of read between some lines that we've already looked at in Daniel, Daniel was set up over the whole kingdom, and then he had asked Nebuchadnezzar to set up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were over Babylon. So it looks as though that the divisions of the land were already in place, and when they come in, they just said, you know, be similar to somebody coming in and heaven forbid, conquering the United States. And they said, well, we've got 50 governors out there. You go here, you go here. But the area seems to be already divided up when they put those people in place. And then they set up 3, verse 2, over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give account unto them, and the king should have no damage. So, what happens a lot today in government? Corruption. There's also a term called plausible deniability. What is that?
Get enough between you and it so you can't be blamed for something.
That means the buck stops with me, but you did it, so I'm going to stay back here. I'm going to not have my hands in this. So kings did similar things. They put people out there to buffer them from all the aggravation going on. But Daniel and two of the people were set up as presidents. And if you go back, almost every culture in history has a little hierarchy built into it that way. You get to the Romans, it's by tens. You have 10, 100, 1,000, right on up the line. So everything funnels up. If you go back to the book of Exodus, what was Moses? Moses was trying to do everything. And what advice was it given? Delegate. Move it off to other people. Don't try to take care of the whole thing. So this is what's taking place at this time. As we get down to verse 3 on your questions, then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Okay. How did Darius know this about Daniel? He was a Mede. They had just come in and captured, taken over Babylon. Even Belshazzar didn't know anything about Daniel. He had to have the queen tell him to call Daniel in, and Daniel can tell you all this. So why is this Darius all excited about Daniel?
It must have been that he had heard about it.
He had what?
Had heard about it, and what he had done.
I believe that is correct because you know, people's I won't say their history, but people's character stretches out, and people know what's going on. So he had knowledge of him. It could have been also because God was taking care of Daniel, but I believe that knowledge was there when they came in.
Daniel did have a reputation though too, right?
Daniel had a mighty reputation. And to go along with what you're saying and also what Brother Kelvin is saying, what was one of Daniel's first prophecies? Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold. However, what's going to happen? Not going to be long before who comes in and takes over. So the Medes and the Persians already knew that Daniel had prophesied that they were going to come and take over, and they did. Verse 4, then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. I have to go back to what Brother Day mentioned in his prayer about being thankful for Daniel. He was taken into captivity at a fairly young age. I'm going 15 plus or minus. What condition has he been in or under during this 67 years?
Well, he wasn't able to enjoy what others could enjoy, marriage and things of this nature. Companionship.
No real companionship. Was in a foreign, basically a slave for all this time. Not around, couldn't worship properly because all he could do would be by himself because there was not a group there. So all this time he has been basically under the thumb of the Babylonians, being treated badly. And yet, through all of that, what character does he exhibit? He never fails God, and he never compromises at all. How many of us today could say that if we were put in similar situations, that we would not break, that we would remain resolute? I know some people in the military, I was fortunate enough not to be in those positions, so I didn't go through that kind of training. But I know some military go through some very harsh training to prepare them in case they are faced with situations like that. So he had no training in that. It was just all based on he and his belief, his faithfulness to God.
When I learned this, it always said, even he being faithful and serving God, yes, but he never even gave the men around him occasion to say anything bad about him other than lie about it.
That's right. They had to perpetrate a lie to do what they wanted to do. Question number 3 and 4 and 5 gets us down to the next section, where they had couldn't find anything, and then said these men, "We shall not find any occasion against Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God." Well, here they didn't mean that they're going to find him doing something against the law of his God. They meant that by using his faithfulness to his God, to the God, that they could work a trap for him. Which in verse 6 says, "Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said thus unto King Darius, live forever." I underlined the next verse in my Bible, not line, but the word. I don't know every translation, so I don't know if every one starts the same way, but in the King James it starts out all the presidents of the kingdom. Well, that's not quite true, is it? You think Daniel would have been in on it? You think all 120 satraps, princes, officials would have been in on it? I think not. But a fair percentage, or at least this little group here, all the presidents of the kingdom, the governors, the princes, the counselors, the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall cast into the den of lions.
Now, don't you think because they were instigating against him that he was not invited?
I would say he wasn't present. And this is a real good lesson here, because why would the king, who had established the hierarchy, the way, the organizational structure that he did, why would he listen to anybody without his chief, Daniel, being present?
Because these folks came in to the king without Daniel because of what they were fixing to do. Now, I don't see Daniel being present simply because of that.
That's correct. So when these came in without Daniel, what made the king listen to them? Vanity. Well, how did they start out? Live forever, O king. Andrea taught me a saying a long time ago about something like that. Just flip me over and butter me on the other side. You know, he was ready for it to be buttered up on all sides. His I'm sorry?
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Flattery will get you places. I'm going to skip. Y'all can follow the questions. I'm just going to go down the Bible.
In modern terms, this is called conspiracy theory.
Yes, sir. So the king established the decree, signed the writing that it not be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Here, if you go back and look at a little bit of history on the Medes and Persians, the way they had their government set up, once a law was passed, that was it. It was in force, which is sort of reminiscent of some ways some things are done today. I recall several years ago where something was trying to be passed, and one of the members of Congress said, "We got to pass the bill to read it and find out what's in it." Isn't that a little bit backwards? Aren't you supposed to know what you're looking at and before you pass it? If I go over to Kelvin and say, Kelvin, give me $20 and I'm going to give you something great. And he says, what is it? I said, well, give me the $20, you'll find out. Is he going to give me $20? Not likely. He wants to know what he's buying. So here, we're getting a little off page here. So back to this. So he signed a decree that was not going to alter. And then verse 9, wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem. He kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God. This next phrase is most important. As he did aforetime. As he did aforetime. See, a lot of things happen in the world today where people don't like it, and all of a sudden they'll go out and protest or something like that. And they really don't have a clue what's going on. They just get excited about what just happened. Here, Daniel did not get excited by the change. He knew the change was in existence, but he didn't change anything about his way of doing. I have, a few years back when some things were going on, people in the church would say, we need to boycott these people. Why? Well, they're doing this. Well, they've been doing it a long time. You just hadn't been paying attention. Or they've been doing something else. You just hadn't been paying attention. We don't need to go looking for or picking a fight. We need to be like Daniel and not change the way we do things. If we were to go out today to boycott, or a petition go around to boycott or complain about a company that was doing something that was not the way God wanted it done, how many companies would we be protesting against? About every one of them. We have to live in this world. We do not have to be a part of this world. We have to live in this world, but we have to stand firm for our faith and belief and not let it change us.
Amen, brother.
So, questions, comments?
Prime example today with this particular verse is they passed laws as far as gender identity and those kind of things. We're still Christians. Doesn't matter what the law says, it's wrong.
And we can go out and protest, but what does that do? It puts us in a bad light, doesn't it? Because now we are, yeah. And I mean, sometimes you want to go out and do something like that because everyone, getting into something like you're talking about, one of the favorite charges against you if you say that you're not in favor of that, you're homophobic. Well, now let's see. What does the word homophobic mean? We know what homo means, don't we? What does phobic mean? Fear. Am I afraid because I don't agree with your lifestyle? No.
For you.
Am I entitled to my belief and my opinion the same as you?
For now.
Yeah. But, so, we just got to be careful. Not bow down and not, we just got to be strong like Daniel. Yes, sir.
There's a biblical principle involved too. Don't follow a crowd or a multitude to do evil. And most of these riots, protests turn out to be bad.
Yep. And it's generally a small percentage of the people that keeps things stirred up and going.
But if
The
you're,
vast majority of them out there are really ignorant of why they're even there.
but if you heard us say one GI does something bad, all the military's bad.
I recall when I was in basic training in 1969. I come from the country, North Alabama. I had a PhD in common sense from the age of 12. When something went wrong in the country, the person that was responsible paid the consequences. And when I was first in basic training and somebody did something wrong and the whole group got penalized, I'm sitting there scratching my head. Why? I didn't do anything. He did it. But what they were doing, they was breaking you down so they could put you back together the way they wanted to, so you would function as a team. I think the church needs to function more as a team. Back to the
On a personal note, even though Daniel was in captivity, he understood and saw how God walked him through certain things. And each and every one of us can look within our lives and see that God has brought us through one storm or another. And why should we turn around? Because, that's our help. And Daniel understood that God was his help. He was his refuge. He was his strength. And we, as Christians, need to understand that when calamity, whatever comes into our lives personally, to disrupt us, that's just another storm, but we already have come out of one storm. God has already brought us out of one storm. We ought to be strengthened enough to go through that storm and come out as well, trusting in God. And Daniel trusted in God no matter what, because he said, the Bible said, when he had heard of his writing, he still did what he did. He didn't try to hide it. He didn't close the windows this time. Open the windows and let everybody see. I'm going to worship my God just as I always have, no matter what you're trying to do against me.
just as aforetime, no change. I read something the other day, and I can't remember who said it, but I thought, man, that even applies to me. They said, I have lived a very blessed life. My worst day would be some other people's dream. If you think about that, how many of us as Christians have lived such a blessed life? If we look around and see what others have and are going through, especially in other parts of the world right now, we here in the United States, especially in the South, we have it great. We just need to build on that. Verse 12. Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree, asked him if he had signed it, which of course he said he did. Verse 13, then answered they and said before the king, that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, and maketh his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with who? With himself. He realized at that point that basically he had been tricked, and that he set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. I need you to think for just a minute. Here the king is. He knows the law of the Medes and the Persians. He knows that once that law goes in, is signed, it goes into effect. As soon as he realizes the consequences of that law, he's displeased with himself, He still knows the law, but he still ponders the situation, trying to figure out a way to not put it in motion. Looking for a loophole. But he's the king. He knows there is no loophole. But yet he was so disturbed with himself that he is still fighting to try to save Daniel. Then the men assembled unto the king and said to the king, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is that no decree nor statute which the king established may be changed. Then the king commanded and brought forth Daniel, cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. So it wasn't only Daniel's reputation that went out into all the lands around Babylon where he was, but the word that Daniel had prophesied from God and the things that God had done for God's reputation was out there also. So my question is, if these people were so smart to know that Daniel's God was the God, and all these images that they were worshiping wasn't near about as powerful as the God, why do they still worship false gods? How many people today can you sit down with, read the Bible with, have them read it for themselves, where it take a passage that says something very, very plain, and then their response be, I know that's what it says, but. Yes, but. My family's always been this way. I'm not changing.
This is what I believe.
This is what I believe. But didn't you just read this? Didn't it say this? So,
I know you don't like the term, but and it's not really human nature, it's just how people are. How many Christians you know have left the church and go to denomination because there's something there they don't find in Scripture.
yeah, I used to get
They know better.
I used to get real irritated with a truck with signs I used to see on the back of big rigs. Their heart was in the right place, but the message was wrong. Go to the church of your choice.
Our God is my co-pilot.
God, I want him to be my pilot. What's wrong with why would I get irritated? What's wrong with the saying, go to the church of your choice?
Shouldn't be your choice.
There's only one church.
There's only one church.
Should not
Now I
be
can choose to go to this congregation because I got friends there, or I like whatever, or I can go here because they're not, well, when Andrew and I were in Arizona, for instance, the first location we went, it was so large that they had two services and they was building a bigger building, and we sort of felt lost. Andrea made a few phone calls, found a smaller congregation, talked to them, and we went there, and that's where we stayed the rest of the time we was in Arizona. A little bit more story to that, but that's basically it. So I'm not saying don't go to a congregation where you're comfortable, but as it was pointed out, you should go to Christ Church. You should go to the church. Yes, sir.
I think it boils down to people's addiction to emotions.
Yep.
Positive emotions, as they people don't want to admit that emotions are liars, to be blunt. It's not to be relied upon truth. People don't want to hear that because most of the time it's not pleasurable to look at truth in the face and admit that you're not living in the truth. I run into that all the time.
Any number of reasons, but it's a good point, good point. Verse 17, and a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. This verse here, to me, is super important too, because it sort of tells you the structure of the lion's den. They put a rock on the mouth of the lion's den, which meant that it was sort of like going down into a cave or going down into an area. And so they was going to seal it. And they put not only the signet ring of the king, but who else? These other folks. Why? Because these other folks knew how the king felt about Daniel and what had gone on. And they was just making absolutely sure that neither party played any pranks or tricks here. That stone was there, it was sealed in place for the appropriate period of time. And then the king, verse 18, the king went to his palace, passed the night fasting. Neither were instruments of music brought before him. He didn't want to be soothed in any way. Sleep went from him. King arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the lion's den, or the den of lions. So, verse 20, when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel, and the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Well, what about his faith? Because earlier he told Daniel that his God would deliver him. And yes, sir.
And why would he ask a question if he wasn't sure that Daniel would answer? I mean, if you ask him and he's been eaten up by the lions, ain't no answer.
That's correct. That is correct. But then, verse 21, then Daniel said unto the king, O king, live forever. Could you be nice to somebody that had just thrown you in a den of lions? But again, we should, because this is Daniel. Even though he had been wrong, he is being honorable to the king. My God hath sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocence was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. So Daniel shows respect to the king. King live forever, but then he chastises him a little bit by saying, my God sent an angel. They know I didn't do anything wrong. And by the way, I didn't hurt you either. So, 23, then was the king exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. Daniel was taken up. No manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God.
You gotta remember, this is an 80-year-old man, too.
80-year-old man's been chunked down into, I'm not 80 yet, but just the fall would probably do me damage.
That's why, you have to be careful when you teach little kids, because most of the pictures you see of Daniel and the lion, he's a young man.
Yeah. I have found them both. I have found some pictures with them being,
The beard older.
yeah, which is not 100% accurate either, because I do believe they emasculated Daniel and his compatriots, and by doing that, the facial hair, the hair wouldn't be a full beard. But that's getting into a lot of technical stuff. We won't go there. So, but
All the images are imagination.
all of them are imagination. And then the king commanded, and they brought those men which accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. Them, their children, their wives, and the lions had the mastery of them. and break all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. So this again builds on the fact that they was thrown down into the den. There have been images where it's sort of like in a cave that's got a platform around it so people could go in and observe what's going on, but then there would be an opening that they would, a way up and down that they would seal. But this again just goes to point out that for them to go down to the bottom means they had to be up somewhere before they were thrown in. And it goes to show also that God definitely had a hand in what was going on, because those lions wasn't on sabbatical. They were hungry. Because as soon as these folks went in, they tore them to pieces. Then the king wrote unto all the people, the nations, languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree. He couldn't change the other one, but he's making a new one. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. Why is he still calling him the God of Daniel?
Just to identify which God it is. They had so many of them.
He's still going to go back to their gods. So, but they're supposed to pay respect to Daniel's God now. For he is the living God. Again, if he's the living God, why am I going to go over here and worship this gold or silver or wood or...
That just makes logic.
which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth, rescueth, worketh signs and wonders in heaven and earth, who had delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Now, that right there is also a very important verse, because if we go again into archaeological digs and finds and all, we find that Cyrus, king of Persia, reigned for 9 years after he took Babylon. So if he took Babylon in 539, he was killed in battle in 530. So if Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus for 9 years, and he was in his early 80s, now we know that he lived into his early 90s. So Daniel had a long, long life of service in there. Questions or comments on chapter 6?
Larry,
Yes, ma'am.
that's interesting. The first decree, there's a time limit on it. 30 days. Nobody can do anything but the first.
Right.
The last one, there's no said time limit.
Right. Well, I think, and this is just personal, I think that the reason that they had a time limit on it was twofold. One, they knew that Daniel was not going to change, and they wasn't going to take him long to trap him. And the second one is, if they had tried to make it for a longer period of time, then that might have caused the king not to be as receptive to it. So I think the big one, though, is that they knew Daniel wasn't going to change, so it wasn't going to take long to take care of it. Good point, though. Anything else? No? Well, y'all can do your questions on your own then, because we've gone through the whole chapter, and we should have all the questions answered for you. Thank y'all so much for your comments and your time and attention.